Hello and welcome. Today I want to tell you a story that you almost certainly haven't heard before. It's set in a time of incredible chaos, just after the Russian Revolution, when empires were collapsing and new nations were fighting to be born. And it takes place in Abkhazia, on the coast of the Black Sea. But our main character isn't a famous general or a revolutionary leader. He's a schoolteacher from Estonia named August Martin, and how he, an outsider, ended up at the very heart of Abkhazia's freedom struggle is a remarkable tale of principle and courage. It's a story that tells us so much about the bigger picture of what was happening in the Caucasus at the time. So, the first question you're probably asking is, what on earth were Estonians doing in Abkhazia in the first place? Well, to understand that, you have to go back a bit further, to the 1860s. After the brutal Russian-Caucasian War ended in 1864, and again following a major Abkhaz uprising that coincided with the Russo-Ottoman War of 1877-78, the Russian Tsarist state forcibly deported a huge portion of the native Abkhazian population to the Ottoman Empire. This left vast areas of a beautiful, fertile land empty. The Tsarist government saw this as an opportunity for colonization, a way to secure its power in these new territories. So people from all over the empire were encouraged to move in. Georgians, Greeks, Russians, Armenians, and, yes, Estonians. By the 1880s, several Estonian villages had been founded in Abkhazia, with names like Erlem Linde, Upper Linde near Sukhum, and Salme and Sulievi. And they built a vibrant community. They had their own choirs and brass bands, and even organized an Estonian song festival in Sukhum in 1914. They ordered newspapers from back home and brought over teachers from Estonia to run their schools and keep their culture alive. And one of those teachers was a young, politically minded man named August Martin. He arrived in Abkhazia in 1915 to teach at the school in Upper Linde. He had no idea he was about to walk straight into a revolution. When the Russian Empire collapsed, Abkhazia, like many other nations, seized the moment. The Abkhazian People's Council, their first ever parliament, was formed, and in 1918 they restored their national independence that had been lost back in 1864. But this freedom was short-lived. Soon after, troops from the newly independent Georgia, led by the Mensheviks, occupied Abkhazia. The Georgian government in Tbilisi needed to create a sense of legitimacy for its occupation. So in early 1919, they organized elections for a new third Abkhazian People's Council. The whole thing was really a sham, designed to install a parliament that would follow Tbilisi's orders. Out of 40 deputies, 27 were openly supporters of the Georgian government. But in the middle of all this, something interesting happened. The Estonian settlers nominated their own candidate, their 26-year-old schoolteacher, August Martin. And he won, forming his own one-man colonists faction in the parliament. The Georgian authorities probably thought he'd be a neutral, quiet voice. They were very, very wrong. From the very first sessions, Martin aligned himself with the small Abkhaz opposition group, the Independents, led by patriots like Samson Chamba. At one of the first meetings in March 1919, Martin stood up and made his position crystal clear. He later wrote about it in his memoirs. He said that while he welcomed Georgia's own independence, the Estonian people believed in the right of self-determination for all peoples of the former Russian Empire. And he said that we Estonians recognize the same right to self-determination for the Abkhazians, the indigenous inhabitants of this beautiful country. You can just imagine the reaction in the room. Here was an outsider, a representative of a small settler community, publicly defending the rights of the occupied Abkhazian people. As an Estonian nationalist himself, he understood the aspirations of another small nation fighting for its sovereignty. He saw it not as a political game, but as a matter of basic justice. This, of course, did not go down well with the Georgian authorities. His principled pro-Abkhazian stance was a real thorn in their side. It got to the point that in February 1920, the Georgian Minister of Internal Affairs himself, a powerful figure named Noi Ramishvili, came to Sukhum and summoned Martin for a chat. Ramishvili tried to be friendly, mentioning he'd studied in Estonia and considered it his second home, but then came the pressure. He said to Martin, "Don't you notice that they, the Abkhaz, are looking to the north, meaning towards Denikin's anti-Bolshevik Russia?" Martin's reply was brilliant. He said and that is part of the concept of self-determination, for everyone to look where they want, where it is more profitable to look, and not where others order them to look. He then told the minister to his face that Georgia's policy was unwise, and that Abkhazians could not be conquered by brute force. His courage was remarkable, but the reality for ordinary people was grim. Another Estonian, Christian Truman, kept a diary during this period, and it gives us a glimpse into daily life. He wrote about how the Abkhaz boycotted the elections for the Georgian Constituent Assembly because Georgia had promised autonomy but delivered nothing. He describes Georgian soldiers constantly making demands on the Estonian villages. In late 1918, they came to the village of Estonka and requisitioned over 20 horses. When a military mobilization was announced in 1919, the Estonians refused to fight in the Georgian army, declaring themselves citizens of the Estonian Republic. This period of occupation finally came to a chaotic end in March 1921, when Bolshevik forces invaded and the Georgian Menshevik army fled. Both Martin and Truman described the scenes in Sukhum. As a French cruiser sat in the harbour, the Georgian elite evacuated, taking with them everything they could carry: carpets, valuables, and tobacco from the warehouses. The retreating Georgian soldiers then went on a rampage, looting and smashing every single shop in the city. After Soviet power was established in Abkhazia, August Martin worked for a short time in the new government's education department under his old ally Samson Chamba. But just a couple of months later, in May 1921, after 6 years in the Caucasus, he left Abkhazia and returned home to Estonia, where he went back to being a schoolteacher. It's an incredible story, isn't it? For 2 crucial years, at a defining moment in Abkhazian history, one of the most articulate and fearless defenders of their national rights in their own parliament was an Estonian schoolteacher. He wasn't Abkhaz, he had no ancestral claim to the land, but he had something just as powerful, a deeply held belief in the right of a people to determine their own destiny. His memoirs have become a vital historical source for understanding that complex period, and even today Abkhazian historians highly appreciate the contribution he made. Sometimes it takes an outsider to see a situation with perfect clarity. For August Martin, the Abkhazian cause wasn't about complex politics or historical rivalries. It was a simple and universal question of justice.